Okay, I tried this like 20 times at home. It's not working, so now I'm walking in the woods. By the end of this, you're gonna have a screenwriting template that nobody but me has ever seen. I think. I don't know. Don't know what everyone's up to. I think I made it. Maybe somebody else made it. But I think it's pretty cool. So I'm gonna give you a template. Visually, I think it's pretty neat. It's pretty modern. It really cranks up and expedites the development process for me. So here we go. Here we go. First, read the how to use this board card. Before you do anything, copy this template. Once you do that, then you're going to make a copy of your own template to make the board that will become your story. We'll call this one My Story, Cody's Trello Story Building Template 2020. Let's talk columns. I've listed out in columns on individual cards the steps to story building according to some of the more commonly known books I've read. A lot of these steps are kind of repetitive of or sound similar to steps from other books and guides. So you might ask, if the steps are similar, why have repeating story structure beats from so many different authors on the board? And we'll get to that soon. Some may prefer a simpler approach, such as Save the Cat to be your guide, while others might want a more detailed approach, such as the 22 steps in the Anatomy of Story. To start us off, I'm going to use Save the Cat, since a lot of you may already be familiar with that structure. Similar to how you may use the no card method, I build my story from left to right, top to bottom. I'm going to place scenes and important moments that would occur at or around these points in the story into the columns according to the beat structure of Save the Cat. I like to see the whole story as it develops, so if a column gets too long, I simply make a second column of the same category. So let's talk about borrowing steps from other books. This trick really helps me blow a little nitrous in the tank when I'm stuck, and there are a few ways to do it that I think are pretty cool. If you already know some of the major beats or scenes of your story, or have an outline, you can start dropping your scenes in. So let's say we're at this point and we're ready to start filling in the gaps, writing and creating new story, but our old nemesis writer's block has us locked up. Well, whether we know story structure well or not, we have our board, and we can recognize story beats that are similar to what we're writing right now. So maybe one of our other authors has a beat, a step, or a trick that can get us out of this rut. Maybe they worded their guidance in a way that can help us bridge the gaps between scenes and acts. So let's pick this card from Hero's Journey. That's pretty close to the same place in my act where I'm trying to create, and I think this guidance will be inspiring. You can place this card in a column you're already using, or make a new column of this category. Whoa, that Hero's Journey inspired me so much that I wrote some new scenes. Okay, cool. Moving on. It's getting good, and I'm stuck again. Problem is, now the other story structure beats aren't really helping the way that they did before. For me, this is when I realize I'm moving out of the I think I have a cool idea for a movie phase and into real writing, because now that we've emptied the tank of those cool plot ideas or shots we just gotta have, we need to consider how our characters are going to drive the plot forward, and not just us forcing bodies from one location to the next. For me, once I've dropped in the scenes that first inspired me to want to write this movie, I actually go straight to the character beats in hopes that I'll write a character-driven story. For this story, I'm going to draw from the positive change arc from Creating Character Arcs by K.M. Weiland. Whatever way makes the most sense to me at the time. Whether that's making new columns or placing those character arc cards into my existing columns, I begin writing my story by asking myself what my characters would do, according to whatever step, question, or story beat I'm focusing on from either the character arcs columns and cards, the Save the Cat beats, or whatever else I've brought in. Just asking myself the questions that are included in most of these books actually forces me to write forward, and combining them takes the effectiveness of this even further. I found that using the right image is another really helpful way to either consciously or subconsciously drive the story forward for me. I like to attach an image that either looks like a character, a relationship, or a scene that I want to make. Or I attach an image that inspires the scene, or something about it, or even just the tone. I'll do this when it comes to characters, whose column I like to keep close by while writing. Sometimes I'll even move that column with me as I work through the story to keep the characters close by. I'll find an image that either looks like the character I want, or maybe use a character from another film or show who inspires my character or has something in common with them. Sometimes I'll even use a friend or someone I know. I find that plugging someone I know into the story practically does the writing for me sometimes because I know how they'd respond in almost every situation. So, thank you, Yebby. Here I have weird science as the image to remind me that the relationship between these two guys and this girl is going to be comparable to the relationships in weird science. Similar to how images of my characters help me inspire more writing, this is really helpful when I'm stuck because I check my relationships column and I'm able to draw inspiration from the relationships in other stories. I have a shot from Terminator here, but my scene isn't in the future and we don't have robots. But I get it, and it's the tone and desperation of the scene that inspires me and makes it the perfect image for this card. But in this scene, I have an underwater shot that's actually pretty close to the shot I'd like to get in the film. Here's how you attach images to cards. Go here, computer, and I'll make this the cover image of this card. Sometimes I'm able to find a little bit of both, where the characters in the scene and the situation and the image are all pretty similar to what I want to do. Or maybe I subconsciously started writing my scene because I already had that one in mind, but does it matter? If you're really awesome, maybe you already have your storyboards and you can help your story along using those. Sometimes as a bit of a broader compass, I just like to take a look at similar films that maybe inspired some of this entire venture. I also keep these nearby to help me move forward. Now, I am a score junkie, so this is one of my favorites. Trello allows you to attach links to cards, and I like to link songs from Spotify here. Sometimes I'll just link a song to a card and listen to it on repeat while I write and refine a scene, over and over and over again. When you click on that link, it'll actually take you to the web browser, but if you have the app installed on your computer, it'll take you to the app. I like to keep in mind what's happening in a scene to better know what purpose it serves. You know how there should be conflict in a scene for it to be interesting? I made a label for that. Is the scene emotional? Is it funny or fun? I made labels for those. Is it nothing at all? Maybe ask yourself why it's in your story. It wasn't intentional, but I actually noticed over time that as my story developed, these labels began to segue nicely. I didn't have emotions and conflict every other scene. It very naturally flowed from tension scenes to action scenes to emotional scenes. You may notice that your labels begin to mirror the structure you intended for your story, what should be happening and when. If you're in the earliest stages of wanting to write your story and want something that's going to force you to address nearly every important question in detail when building your story, I recommend using one of the development columns I've created for you here. Similar to using the creating character arcs questions to drive your story forward, I've created a checklist with every writing exercise question from John Truby's Anatomy of Story. Just work your way through these questions and you'll find yourself developing your story, which you can start building on this board. In fact, even if you do have your outline and story already complete, without abandoning your style and what makes you original, I'd still consider going over these steps to see if there's something that you realize you want to give more attention to. When researching to see if anyone else had used Trello for similar purposes, I found a guy named Jason Coop and a method he refined called the Story Passes method. Writing a screenplay through story passes is like writing your story in ever-increasing detail, starting with a one-sentence telling of your story in the first pass and ending with a complete screenplay in the last pass. Each pass is like a complete telling of your story, just with more detail in each pass, and told in different contexts. It's pretty good. Have a system for where you left off so that you don't spastically bounce all over the place and work on every scene or the entire script at once. I add myself to the card of whatever scene I was last working on so that I can pick right up where I left off when I come back. Okay, this is really handy and important. I have here the drop column. I keep this column at the beginning of the board so that if I'm at the gym or in public or driving, and if I think of something, I just quickly draft it on a card in the drop column and go back later and add it to the story. Because Trello requires data, and especially if you're using your phone, it's way easier to just drop a card into the first column on your board. I have more specific ways that I use Trello for story building, such as character questions and profiles on the cards about what they want and how they get what they want. Sometimes I have conversations with myself or with friends in the comments section about why I chose to go in a direction, and that way it's always there if I need to be reminded. I also have a column called the JUNKYARD, and that's for scenes that I had that I removed but should not delete yet just in case I need them later. I'm not going to deep dive into everything else today because this is probably already too long.
I know that it's working for me and I'm having a really good time while writing, so just shoot me an email.